I say the peace continues. It's more like the dreams continue. It would probably be the better title. There's so many dreams in this lesson. Anyway, during this time of year, the focus of the family during Christmas tends to be on children, the little ones. We hope and want so much for their joy. And there are certain ages where this joy might be at its peak. I'm throwing out the idea from the age of 4 to 8 might be kind of the high spot, fully taking in the magic of the season. I think as I think about Christmas, that might have been the age where a lot of these reflections come out of. But in any event, we certainly do love and care and celebrate kids under 4 years old, over 8 years old, and of course we are all children, aren't we? There's a little bit of child within each of us. And the season is a wonderful time to reflect on the value of life and the opportunities that we have. Now, most of us think of children first because of their relative lack of power. They rely on adults for survival. Children rely on adults for survival, for everything, for their, you name it, and they're very dependent. And so it makes sense as adults, our first order of business is to think about our young and support them. Now, in Jesus' time, children were not as valued as they are today. The value of a person was largely determined on what that person could bring to the table, as it were. And if you were a little too young and a little too weak, there wasn't much you could bring. And so your relative value was not that great. But Jesus makes it clear, does he not, that no, all children, bring the little ones to me. Every child is valuable. Every child is sacred and should never be pushed aside. Jesus makes this very clear, and that cuts across a little bit of a cultural norm. Now, I trust that's the way we see children today. Meaning, we all think of children as sacred, right? Not just my children, but your children and all the children of the world. All the children of the world. It might be that that is the linkage we need in the world to unite the world rather than divide it. To think of the hope of children. And we celebrate joy to the world, the Lord has come. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Well, the Bible story in joy is kind of short-lived this morning. They give us a doozy. Joseph receives direction in his latest dream to move away. His family is at risk, so they move to Egypt. The birth of a possible Messiah is perceived as a great threat to Herod, right? So the family goes into exile. Now, I am guessing that the family had enough provisions for the trip and the time they spent in Egypt by virtue of the gifts that were bestowed upon them from the 3 kings, or however many kings from the Orient that visited the Holy Family and presented them with gold and frankincense and myrrh. I trust that they probably used that as trade to get by for however long they needed to be gone. Sadly, this whole story creates collateral damage, though. The slaughter of the innocents. If the story gives you pause, particularly about the death of the innocents and how this all works, that's a good thing. We know that in this story, a child was at risk, Jesus, and the family moves away from that risk. We get it. And the risk was created by greed and corruption and power seeking. We get that. Herod makes that abundantly clear. And we would do the same thing as Joseph, wouldn't we? If we were in that story with our child and the world was dangerous, what would we do? Well, I guess maybe move to Egypt. In any event, that was then, and this is now. And children have been at risk ever since in a variety of different ways. And children have always been at risk because of greed and corruption of adults in positions of power, political, economic, social, and sometimes even the church. And in our world, a lot of that greed and corruption embraced, let me just say, racism. You see, there was a racism in this community that was based on a false narrative that blacks moving into white neighborhoods would reduce the property value and increase the crime, and it created tension. And from 1950 to 1965, there was crime. It was white on black crime. Over 200 incidents of blacks trying to move into white neighborhoods that were burned out, and all kinds of terrible stuff happened. 2 years later, we have what we call the riots or a revolt. And all this was sponsored by greed and corruption, designed in terms of redlining. That's the world in which we have been brought up in. And sadly, all children, black children, white children, everybody wanted their children safe. Everybody, no matter what color of their skin, wanted their children safe. To have good schools, to have good food, to have the things we all want. We all want the same thing. We all do. And we know that. However, people with power played us like puppets. Theories of racism designed to divide and conquer created chaos. And the sad part of it is when you look back, and being a Monday morning quarterback's the easiest thing to do. When we think of the teachings of Christ, the world always had a chance to say no. Let's look for unity. There was always that choice. No. And it happened from here or there, but not much. And so I bring this up, and I know this is sober, but we live with this aftermath to this very day. And I think if we are thinking about being the body and blood of Christ, we need to have a degree of sensitivity and awareness about the milieu in which we live. Because awareness and understanding creates better opportunity to share the peace in a variety of different ways. Now, that was then and this is now, and today there are renewed efforts to establish other people as the other And the people I'm referring to today come from Central America. I wear this stole because it was made in Guatemala, one of the countries I'm thinking about. And with all of this challenge that we're faced with, we're all faced with it. Jesus is with white children, he's with black children, brown children, yellow children, red children. He's with everybody. And he wants all children to have a full and rich life, just like we want for our own. You see, Jesus taught that people were sacred, right? And we are to welcome and love all people. A powerful message that, when properly applied, dismantles power structures that are designed to control people, to control each of us. So, who is the baby Jesus today? Who are they? First off, the answer is baby Jesus is everywhere, right? Baby Jesus is just the whole world. All babies are baby Jesus. But some of them do come from Central America. And for the sake of just an argument, Central America, they're coming. They've been coming for a long, long time. It's not just the last year or two. It's been a long time. But why did they come? They come for the same reasons we would come if we lived there. To protect our kids. They're trying to leave economic instability, violence, insecurity, corruption in government. People just want to live a safe life. Just like the Holy Family, right? Hey, Israel is no longer safe for you. You got to get out of Dodge. And they got out of Dodge, didn't they? And it's important, and this is the social scientist in me, but it's important, when we look at how this stuff happens, okay, our efforts at economic expansion over 100 years, let's say, have led to various degrees of instability in these countries that stimulated greed and corruption, of which they are trying to deal with. And the problem, and it's not consistent over time, but what has happened is when we look at an asymmetrical relationship, a very big, powerful entity negotiating with someone who has very little power and is just trying to get by, that asymmetrical distribution of power can either be managed properly for the good of all, or it can take advantage. We've had plenty of examples of doing it the right way in Central America, but we've also had plenty of examples where we haven't. And this is what's created the problem. So, like the Holy Family that fled to Egypt, we have families coming to protect their children from harm. Just like we would do if we were in the same boat. So what are we to do with all this? The first thing is to not deny this reality and the history that leads us to this day. Please don't. Learn. You see, the recognition of these conditions is a godly call to action. This is where the church needs to go, see, helping those in need. It's a godly call to action. Don't get mad at the messenger. Get mad at what has created the message. Now, to conduct justice and the great peace, we need to celebrate first this baby that was born. We need to be filled with his love. We need to recognize that we are of value. We need to recognize that all people are of value. Everybody. And we need to shut the voices off that try to divide and conquer us. They don't care about us. They never did. And they're never gonna. And what I hope this does, and I am sorry, this is the lesson that we get the first Sunday after celebrating the birth of Christ. But the way we celebrate the birth of Christ is to take that love out into the world, correct? And I hope that what I'm talking about adds fuel to your fire, because there's a lot of fire right here. There's a lot of good stuff going down in this community called St. John. We are involved in the world. And we're only, and there's more, of course, we can do. But I hope this situation gives us that much more energy, that much more commitment to try to do the right thing. And fuel all the ministries we have. Ministries like Pathways and Compassion, the St. John House, God's Garden, Lutheran World Relief, Tutoring, Neighborhood House, Goodfellows Scouting, Micah 6, Jubilee Food, and Meals on Wheels. I could go on, but we are involved in a whole lot of stuff, and there's a whole lot of love going down trying to make a difference in the world. And we need to be aware and be filled with the energy to take those next steps. So, next year, this year, we'll be filled with more mission because we believe we're God's hands and feet. And we believe that we can make a difference in the world, and we already are. Always understanding that the differences that exist need to be challenged and resolved. Amen.